Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to HoopsHD.com, our Hoops HD Report NCAA Tournament Edition. I am your host, Chad Sherwood, joined by our full panel here. We've got David Griggs, Matt Zakowski, John Stalika, John Teitel, and Joby Fortson all here to take a look at what the selection committee did and tell you who's going to win it all. So you just listen to us here, fill out your bracket with exactly what we tell you, and you're going to win your office pools.
Right. Yes.
But let's start with let's go right into it at the start, actually, and talk about what the NCAA selection committee did right and did wrong. And John T., you are our committee guessing expert. I think you ranked very high in the bracket matrix once again this year. Do you see anything that really shocked you from what the committee did?
Shock is a strong word. I actually had all 68 teams correct. So while some people might have thought that Syracuse or Illinois State should have snuck in for a team like USC or Kansas State, I think that there were enough people who crowdsourced it and thought it in the majority that nothing shocked me. As far as specific seeds, I got 63 of 68 within one seed line, so at least not a shock to me, I'm happy to report. The ones that stuck out to me, if we have time to
counted. Good job, John. Good job.
Wisconsin, I had them as a 6 and they were an 8, even though I saw them in person with my own eyes destroy most of the Big Ten last weekend. Virginia Tech, I had as a 7. They ended up as a 9. I think that might have been an ACC bias. Shockers, I had as an 8. They were a 10, even though all they did for the past month, it seems like, was beat everybody on the planet who they played. And then for the 2 teams who ended up as 7 seeds, who I thought were going to be 9 seeds, Dayton, who I saw with my own eyes lose at GW, who is not in the tournament, and South Carolina, who had been up and down but seems to have been trending downward recently. So, again, no shock. I was 2 away. But those are the 5 that stuck out to me seed-wise.
Well, I tell you that I listened to a couple of interviews afterwards, and Mark Hollis, especially on the Wichita State pick, he made a comment that was the most heaviest debate that they had in the selection room in terms of seeding. What do you do with a team with incredible metrics but did not have the resume with having played people? And Matt, do you agree that Wichita State should be down there in the 10 line when they are a very scary 10 seed now?
Oh, no, that was really wrong. Like, I think as a caliber of team, they're like a 3 or 4 seed. Their profile was that of like an 11. I would have split the difference in somewhere in the 6, 7 range, maybe an 8 at worst, but 6 or 7 I think is where they should have got it.
Well, if we kind of say that Dayton was overseeded and Wichita was underseeded, Joby, they're playing each other. Maybe it doesn't really matter at the end of the day with the 7-10 game.
Well, if you look at Las Vegas, Wichita State actually opened up as a 6.5-point favorite. I don't recall a 10 seed being favored by that much over a 7.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Joby.
Yeah, no, you hit it on the head. Dayton's been really not playing great recently, and they bowed out early in a weak A-10 tournament. They're about, and John T had them as a 9. Now, I would argue that they should be a 10, and so Wichita State, hey, have at it. I almost feel like I know the committee is too busy to do the matchups accordingly, but I think it actually worked out okay at the end of the day. What this clearly, the message was sent with Illinois State's non-entry, and Wichita State here is Missouri Valley. Wake up. Your demand of home, and if no one gives it to you, your teams are going to be hurt over that. You need to actually schedule.
David, let
me jump in on that real quick.
David, let me throw it over to you first with a quick comment on this Wichita State thing, because we saw absolutely something amazing happening today on Twitter, and I don't know if this is where you were going with it, but Dan Muller, the head coach of Illinois State, tweeted out today that it upset that his team didn't make it, that, hey, we want a home and home. Any of you major conferences, call us. We want a home and home. Andy Kennedy from Ole Miss actually responded on Twitter. We watched this happen on Twitter today, and phone calls were followed up. And Ole Miss and Illinois State now have a home and home thanks to Twitter today.
Well, I don't know how much Ole Miss would have helped them this year as far as quality wins, but yeah, this is more of a general feeling of mine than a specific feeling to Illinois State. I do think that there's something inherently wrong with teams being criticized about how they don't play teams by the same teams that won't play them. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous to me, and I think that happens a lot, and not just with the exclusion of Illinois State, but when you look at where Wilmington ended up in the bracket, when you look at where Middle Tennessee ended up in the bracket, it's obvious to me that they would not have gotten in without the automatic bids. And after thinking about it, do I even blame the committee for that? Maybe not, but I think that is not just a committee problem, but maybe an overall college basketball problem. This isn't pro basketball or pro football. There is no director of scheduling. It's up to teams to do it on their own. But there are good teams out there that aren't getting the chances to play in the types of games that the committee values. And before you say it, Chad, I know they could do a better job of playing each other, and they need to. But I do have an issue with teams like the power conference teams pointing out how these schools never play anybody, yet they themselves won't play them.
So, and John, you had a comment about it also?
I was going to say there actually was one program from the Big 12 that played them, and that was TCU. I mean, that was a game that I believe Illinois State had actually lost. They also played, I'm trying to think, who was it? Tulsa and St. Joe's, good historical programs, but this was the wrong year to be playing them.
Well, you got to do better than that if you're in the Missouri Valley. You can't schedule one power conference and an American and a Atlantic 10 conference team. John T, you having some Philly ties. You know what Temple did every year, especially under John Chaney. Went out there, scheduled everybody they could possibly schedule under the sun.
I do. Sadly, there's only one Philly basketball team I'm thinking about last weekend, and it didn't end well, so we're just going to move right along.
Princeton stormed the court at the Palestra.
So close.
But let me ask you this. I mean, I know that logistically this would be a challenge, but we have these exempt tournaments in November. What if there was a weekend in February, like mid to late February, where we would have maybe the top 80 teams in 10 different tournaments of 8?
Oh, I thought you were going to go bracket buster out of me, honestly.
Well, no, the bracket buster, I think, inadequately was not adequately servicing this, but at least it was servicing it at a degree better than zero. Like, what if there was something like that sort of mimicked the bracket buster, where teams in the top 80 or top 100 were put in the groups of 8, and we had a tournament just to give and then if Middle Tennessee, UNC Wilmington, Illinois State gets out there and can't win those games, then fine.
I think that logistically it's a little easier to schedule a tournament over Thanksgiving when the school is not as involved as you are trying to take a week off in February and then a week off again in March for 2 tournaments.
So you don't think it would be perfect for Valentine's Day weekend?
No.
Well, and here's the other component here. I actually place more blame on to split the Missouri Valley, more blame actually on Wichita State than Illinois State to a degree. Wichita State can get those games. Gonzaga gets them. Don't tell me they can't. Teams go out and play them. They can't get Kansas because of a unique component here. But they most certainly could go out and get a lot of Big Ten ACC games teams on homes. Illinois State, because they're not a name program, they're not going to – it's a little tougher. And we didn't know entering the year that Illinois State would have the gaudy record that they would. I think if people knew that, they would schedule, because then a loss to them isn't as big a deal. Teams, smart scheduling teams, and there are a number out there, Virginia, Wisconsin, et cetera. There are a number of teams that are smart and realize, hey, I schedule these games. I lose them. It's not going to kill me, but if I win them, holy moly, this is awesome. And it helps my tournament bid and get a number one. I mean, did losing to Georgia, you've said this before, David, did losing to George Washington hurt Virginia getting a number 1 seed? No.
And a school near and dear to my heart is actually in the middle of a home and home with Northern Iowa right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And, there's a team on the 12 line that beat a team on the 9 line, Vanderbilt, by 27, yet Vandy's still in. So there's that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and pull up on the screen here the bracket. We're going to kind of go region by region. I want to discuss each of the regions here, get some picks, get some upset picks, see what we like here. But I'm going to pull up here on the screen. It should be up right now. This is our Hoops HD bracket. You can download this from our website. You can print it out if you like. But let's kind of start. We should be able to see the East region and the Midwest region on the screen at the moment. Let's kind of start over there in the East with Villanova
Can
against
you blow that up a little bit, Chet? Or never mind. Like, it's fine.
Okay, we good?
Yeah.
Okay, we got Villanova taking on the winner of the Mount St. Mary's New Orleans 16 seed game that is coming up here. I believe that's the first game on Tuesday night, and they play the winner of Wisconsin Vatech. Let's kind of start right there, Matt. Let me get your thoughts on that. Obviously Villanova, I assume you think it's going to go, but what about this Wisconsin Virginia Tech matchup to begin with?
Real interesting contrast to styles, and I said off air that normally slow teams like Virginia, Wisconsin that do well against fast teams. One exception to that was Buzz's Marquette teams generally did fairly well against Bo Ryan's Wisconsin. So now Buzz is in Vatech. Greg Gard plays a very similar style to Bo Ryan at Wisconsin. Intriguing matchup. I probably would take Vatech if they had Chris Clark. Mm-hmm. Without him, I think I might like Wisconsin, but it'll be a close game that I think Vatech might get a little more tempo out of, so like in the 70s, but I like Wisconsin in a close one, and then I think the winner of that Nova should handle okay either way.
Well, Matt, if I have you in this region here, I guess we should ask the other question. Mount St. Mary's or New Orleans?
Hey, pulling for the Privateers, and hey, I'd be cheering for them against any of the other one seeds, but not my Big East brother, Nova.
Joby, let me ask you about your Virginia Cavaliers are in that second pod there in Orlando, going against a very tough Wilmington team, along with Florida and East Tennessee State.
This is what losing to Notre Dame has wrought, because I would much rather take the 5 route that they have. Because I'm not as high on Princeton this year. Wilmington can beat Virginia. If you want that 12-5 game, this is one that certainly can happen, as it often does. I would hope Virginia's prepared. The key is the next game. East Tennessee State, watch out. Watch out here, because Florida, as pointed out by Matt off air, sir, they lost some inside game. I don't know how strong really the SEC is. After all, they did lose 3 times to Vanderbilt. It'll be very interesting in that second game, but you could see 2 upsets here, or it's 2 closer games than you imagine.
Yeah. I think this is one of the most interesting pods, and I believe this is going to be Thursday afternoon, one of the first sets of games.
It is. It's 12:40, and it's the key for Florida though is they get in Orlando, and that will definitely have a home field advantage, home court advantage. Florida State being the other team, though, who knows if the Seminole fans, which unfortunately the Gator fans show up at a higher rate than the Seminole fans, but for the Seminole fans, they'll be there. I think they will be rooting for Virginia against Florida if that's the matchup.
John T., the Tulsa bracket, the Tulsa pod there, Baylor, New Mexico State, and SMU against the winner of Providence or USC. SMU, who looked really good in the American tournament, do you think they come out of this, or you think you're going somewhere else?
I've been doubting SMU for most of the season, and then they went out and won 30-something games. So I'm going to stop doubting them, and I think that they are going to take care of business against either of the first 4. I think Baylor is not unstoppable, but good enough and athletic enough. I got to interview Scott Drew on the Big 12 call today and ask him if he thought that, because he's been to Elite Eights and he's lost to Yale, so he's seen both sides of it in March. He's like, I wish I knew, like, in advance how my team was going to do, but the thing is, the whole reason this tournament is exciting because you never know. As far as the Texas-size matchup of Baylor and SMU, I would need a little more time to analyze it because we're not there yet. But SMU's schedule was a little weak outside of the great Cincinnati Bearcats, of course. So I think that they're unproven. Ojale can play with anyone, but so can Motley. So I think I'm leaning Baylor.
Sleek, I was going to go with you for the next bracket here, but actually I got to throw it back to Matt because your team is in here, and I'll hit you up with the next one after this. Because Matt, South Carolina Marquette and Duke Troy there. Can your Marquette team knock off Angry Frank's team? Maybe I'll let Salika debate you back because he's the big South Carolina fan.
This is one of Stalika's team.
Yeah, this is because you got Marquette, one of the top offenses, South Carolina, one of the top defenses. Now, looking at it already, because, of course, I'm a Marquette fan, in 5 of the last 7 or 8 games, South Carolina has given up more than a point per possession. So that really good D might be cracking a little, and that'd be a great sign for Marquette. And I think precision execution sometimes can defeat a great D. And when Marquette's rolling, they have great execution on offense.
So do you think they beat South Carolina?
Yes, I will. I'll say in the game like 78-73 range.
Sleeka, let me throw it over to you. You want to counter that with Angry Frank? And do you want to make comments on the Duke-Troy game also?
I'm actually siding with Matt on this one because I like how Marquette has at least been able to beat tournament teams away from home, which is something South Carolina could not claim since Syracuse ended up being an NIT team. But we're also going to have the possible storyline of Krzyzewski versus Wojciechowski in round 2 if both Marquette and Duke move on.
That'll be a real interesting matchup there. And well, let me ask you this, Sleeka. Let me stick with you. Do you think Duke gets by the winner of South Carolina, Marquette?
I think they do, and because I think Baylor's going to be upset in the first round, actually. I think it's going to end up being Villanova and Duke in the regional final.
All right. David, Sleeka went out on a limb here, went with Villanova Duke in the regional final. Do you think that's pretty crazy to go with the 1 seed and the 2 seed, or what?
Not in this one, no. And that's a fantastic regional final.
Yeah, it is.
And the thing is, I mean, it really does favor Duke being so close to their home court. Right there in so close to New Jersey.
Well, let's go ahead, and we're going to get Final Four picks at the end of the show. I'm going to scroll down here a bit so that we can pull the West region up on the screen. And David, let me stick with you here in Salt Lake City there, where we got Gonzaga against South Dakota State and the Northwestern, their first ever tournament, taking on Vanderbilt in the 8-9 game.
Yeah, it's their first ever tournament, and now the next step is to get that first tournament win, which I do not think they will get. I know Vandy was beaten rather handily in their last SEC tournament game, but Northwestern didn't fare a whole lot better. I've really, really been impressed with how Vandy's looks these last 3 or 4 weeks. I was surprised that they got the 9 seed, to be honest, but I thought I'd be picking them to win a game off the 10 or 11 line, but I think they get this one, and I think they got it in them to keep it within 20 against Gonzaga.
Well, Tytel, do you agree with him? You just had a chance to see this Northwestern team in the Big Ten tournament. I kind of think Northwestern's going to win this game, and after one NCAA tournament game, have more wins ever than Nebraska does.
What is that supposed to mean?
He's been saving that stat up for 80 years, ladies and gentlemen. I liked Northwestern. I really thought that they were going to go down to Maryland just because it was like the most hostile neutral site game I've ever seen. The Verizon Center was packed to the gills with Terps fans, and they just couldn't get it done. They had a second-half lead in double digits. It was such an impressive performance. And I asked Collins after the game, like, what is going on with the team? Because in the regular season, they were 10th in the Big Ten in shooting, like 43.5%. And then in their 2 games, obviously when you're going a 31-0 run against Rutgers, like, you're going to score some points. But then to play like a decent Maryland team, I think they shot 55% after shooting 60%. I'm like, I said, what's going on? I didn't have a creative question. He's like, it's all Scotty Lindsey. When he was hurt for 4 games, not only did the team shooting suffer because they didn't have Lindsey scoring, but with players in different roles and having to take on different responsibilities, he said it kind of brought everyone down. And now that he's back, it took time because he was gone, I think, for 3 weeks. And then even though he's been back for 3 weeks, it took him those 3 weeks to get healthy. Now that he is, like, they're playing much better. So it's a great story, and I want them to win. But I also interviewed Luke Cornett today of Vanderbilt, a second-team academic All-American. And I still can't believe they got in with 15 losses and got a 9 seed. But they did. They're good.
All right. Joby, this in the Buffalo pod there, we've got Notre Dame, Princeton, West Virginia, Bucknell. You mentioned this Notre Dame Princeton game earlier. You don't have faith in them.
No. Princeton, I don't think should be on the 12 seed when I see some of the 13s around, including Winthrop and ETSU. I think Notre Dame takes care of business pretty soundly, which you don't – when you get to 12-5, it's actually – if you come out and say the 5's definitely going to win, that's going out on a limb. I'm going to go out on that limb. And – West Virginia, I think Bucknell's just not the right matchup for West Virginia. I think West Virginia advances. But the upset happens is I heard it was well stated, I can't remember who, but on CBS, I think, say that West Virginia can beat anybody in the country on a given day. Villanova, Kansas, they can beat anybody.
Yep.
But they require you to make – but if you don't make mistakes, you can beat them.
Yep.
The way Mike Bray has Notre Dame playing right now is I think they're the type of team who won't make mistakes against that press. And so I like Notre Dame here to come out of this pod because it's just the wrong matchup. If they were playing a team like even a Kentucky as a 3-4 or something, I'd really like West Virginia in that case. But Notre Dame they're the bad matchup for, I think.
Well, Slika, I got to go to you now. The last team that was announced during the selection show may even had you sweating a little bit there at the end. Your Xavier Musketeers going against Maryland and the Battle of Florida there in the other game there, Florida State and Florida Gulf Coast.
I mean, we had been sweating pretty much since February, so what's a few extra minutes in the selection show? But that being said, Xavier probably got the best possible 6 right now in terms of how hot and how cold teams have been playing. Maryland, I mean, they did fall apart against Northwestern, but problem is they're going to have a much deeper bench than Xavier right here. It's very tempting to pick Xavier in this one, but I actually think Maryland's going to advance out of the first round.
And do you think they get by that ACC matchup against Florida State there?
I know it's also tough to trust a Florida State team in March, but Leonard Hamilton does have the occasional Sweet 16 under his belt, so I'll take the Noles to advance to San Jose.
And I apologize. I assumed you were taking Florida State over Gulf Coast. Was I right?
Yes. Gulf Coast will have a home game. Like I said, there'll probably be more Gator fans than Seminole fans.
I like the way, after being utterly disappointed and railing on Xavier going in the last week, I do like how they played in the Big East tournament. I do think they have it in them to beat Maryland. Anyway.
Matt. Salt Lake City region there. Well, sorry, I got to go Slika here. I apologize. I'm not Slika, Sitel here. I apologize. Yeah. This is your Arizona region. I didn't quite glance at it. I'll get you with the
my region. Why, thank you.
Your region here in Salt Lake, Arizona, against those Fighting Hawks of North Dakota in their first ever tournament appearance. St. Mary's VCU in a pretty interesting game in the other one.
So I just interviewed about an hour ago assistant coach Jeff Horner of North Dakota. And I said, I want to wish you guys the best of luck, but I'll put it on the table and be honest, I can't wish you all the luck because of Arizona. He's like, oh, I get it. So he, in his playing days, was a 3 seed with Iowa, and they got upset by a 14 seed Northwestern State.
At the buzzer.
On a fadeaway shot at the buzzer. It still sticks with him, obviously. However, if he has to turn to his old coach for some notes on a Pac-12 rival, who was his coach at Iowa?
Steve Alford.
Yeah. Steve Alford. He says he's already sent him a text, and he's waiting to hear back for some tips.
Well, I don't know. Would Steve Alford do that to Arizona, considering the camaraderie that those two have exhibited lately?
Funny, though, I was in Vegas the year of that Northwestern State game and had that game, and it was made a very nice trip, actually. But but how about the St. Mary's VCU? I assume you got Arizona coming out of these 4 teams here.
I do. As far as St. Mary's VCU, it's tough. I keep thinking of VCU in Shaka / upset in March mode, and Will Wade is still doing a great job, but different coach, different team. If they had beaten Rhode Island, I think I would like them a lot more, but they also might be higher than a 10. I'm going St. Mary's, but it's going to be very close, I think.
Okay. Yeah, the one thing about this is that neither of them had really beaten or won that many big games during the year. I do predict that one of these teams will win a big game.
Okay, Matt, let's turn over to the South region, which is on the other side of the screen here. We've got North Carolina against Texas Southern and Arkansas Seton Hall. I assume you got North Carolina, but what about this Arkansas Seton Hall game?
I would go with my fellow Big East brethren and the Pirates of Seton Hall. I really like what Angel Delgado's done at the end of the year. They seem to have got a little bit of an offensive flow. Slowing the pace is probably better since you don't have a point guard. And then I think, Desi Rodriguez has stepped up. So I think the Hall, played a little stronger league. And this, I think, is a good matchup. Arkansas, they're not going to overly out-execute them, which I think you could maybe do to beat the Hall. The next matchup is going to be a different story, unfortunately. I remember seeing UNC Providence last year and hoping my Big East team could give them a game, and UNC ran them out the building. I think they do the same thing to Seton Hall.
All right. David, let me give this one to you here. You're an under the radar guy. We've got two very good under the radar teams here in Milwaukee. Minnesota goes against Middle Tennessee and Butler against Winthrop.
Yeah.
Do you see one or even two upsets here?
I do see one, and I see the possibility of a second. Winthrop, I think, will really frustrate Butler. At least I think Butler pulls it out in the end. But Winthrop does have it in them to win this game. And I think Middle Tennessee is just – Minnesota's a good matchup for them. They've played the teams that they have played that play like Minnesota and look like Minnesota, they've beaten, and in some cases beaten them badly. I do see Middle coming out of that one. And then I actually have them winning 2 games and then beating Butler and then going to the Sweet 16 and feeling really good about themselves when they lose by 30-ish to North Carolina.
The name escapes me right now, but I think Minnesota also had a significant injury in the Big Ten tournament, so I'd agree on this one.
Yeah.
Akeem Springs, he's done.
Yes. And Middle Tennessee.
He wasn't a big scoring threat, but he really takes away from the depth is the problem there with Minnesota.
Yeah.
All right, David, go ahead.
Oh, but yeah, Middle Tennessee is probably, again, they were seeded by their paper, and I guess you can't say that's unfair, but how unfair is it to Minnesota? Because I think this is a case, another one being Wichita, who we'll get to later, that is, the team is much better than their paper.
Stalika, in Sacramento, your second favorite team, the Cincinnati Bearcats, going up against the winner of the K-State Wake game and UCLA Kent State. You having a lot of Ohio connections. I got to throw this out here. Do you see that Cincinnati Kent State all Ohio battle coming in the second round?
I was going to say, one of the fun facts I was going to throw out earlier was one of the play-in game winners always wins at least one tournament game, but I think it's probably going to be on the other side with Providence. I could see Wake Forest winning this game, but probably not getting past Cincinnati.
And what about UCLA?
I think UCLA actually is going to get to the Elite Eight this year,
Okay, so
but no further.
You think they take care of Cincinnati? Well, Ty, you've got some Pac-12 ties. Do you agree with him that this UCLA team gets out of this pod here, if not further?
If the Cincy guy's picking them, I'm going to pick them too, I guess.
Okay. All right.
I disagree. I think Kansas State beats Cincinnati or Wake. I don't think Cincinnati wins the first game.
I think Cincy goes to the Sweet 16.
I'm with you, Matt.
Wow.
Rock, if they can it'll be tough because they could lose that first round game to the playing game winner. If they get past that game, I like them against UCLA because UCLA is not equipped for a rock fight. They are not. It is a big matchup for UCLA. What I said on the podcast a while ago. You don't want to play in Oklahoma State, Cincinnati, et cetera, for UCLA. You better start to learn to play defense because if you're letting Cincinnati score, which with ease, which I think would happen, then all of a sudden they might not realize what they got themselves.
I think I like this. Listen, I like the Cincy team because they are better on offense now. They've still kept their rock solid defense, but Jerron Cumberland, Kyle Washington, Jacob Evans taking a huge step up in his sophomore year. This is a really good Cincinnati team that not a ton of eyeballs have probably been on because they're stuck in that bad league, but this is a really good team that I think is going to win a couple games.
They're going to have a lot of open jumpers if they get to that point.
And Evans and Cumberland.
And they might hit a couple of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe 3.
All right. Joby, let me stick with you a second here down in Indianapolis. I gave you one really fun region that we discussed earlier. Here's another one that I think is going to be really fun.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun.
Game. And then Kentucky NKU.
I was talking all the time on the prior podcast. You probably heard that, look out for Louisville, Northern Kentucky in that fight because you're going to have nothing but Big Blue fans in that stadium. Well, unfortunately for Northern Kentucky, they're playing the wrong Kentucky team. I love when little brother plays big brother, and Northern Kentucky is going to have a puncher's chance, much like Morehead State, a few years ago. I think Northern Kentucky has a shot, especially since Kentucky can do the slip-up, a.k.a. Tennessee. But I think Kentucky's going to win that game, and they're going to be bruised afterwards, and the Shockers, the number 7 seeded Shockers will upset them. in the next round.
Yeah. David, you agree with him? I mean, I think that this is a real scary second round game. Kentucky against Wichita.
I have Wichita winning it. I wouldn't call Northern Kentucky Kentucky's little brother. I think it's more like a second or third cousin removed. Like,
True enough.
they just haven't. There's just no heat there.
It's not Murray State.
It's not Murray or even Western or. I mean, those teams aren't on Kentucky's level by any means, but they're established enough to be jealous of them. I don't even think NKU is there yet. Like, I think they haven't really been around long enough to be pissed off enough to be jealous of UK yet.
All right. Let me go ahead and scroll it up here, and we'll bring the Midwest region back in. Tytel, let me start with you. Kansas against the winner of NC Central, UC Davis, and Miami, Michigan State in the 8-9 game.
Kansas, of course. As far as the 8-9, I saw the Spartans, and the press conference was one of the most surprising of all the ones I went to because Coach Izzo mentioned that he was disappointed in his team, and he admitted, that's not something he's often said in his decade upon decade of coaching. And it was one game, and, Aaron Harris is hurt, and they have a lot of freshmen who might be hitting the wall, so there's all sorts of explanations or excuses for it. And Jim Larinaga has a nice tradition of winning in March, as does Coach Izzo. I think I'm going to give this one to the conference with the ACC bias and go with the Canes.
Do you think they have any shot against Kansas?
I will refer that to Josh Jackson's attorney because if he is out, then I think that there is, but I think that he's going to be back.
Okay. And I got to ask the question, NC Central or UC Davis?
I like Davis because I think this is either their first time or first time in forever.
It's a first time. It's their first time actually.
Ever.
First ever bid.
In Division One.
Division One level. Yes, thank you.
The last time they played it in a tournament game, they won the championship, I think.
Yes, that was the Big West Tournament championship game 2 days ago. But yes, it was.
May have been referring to Division Two as well.
Yeah, but Matt, I'm
pretty sure that's not right.
Over in Milwaukee, the 5-12 game between Iowa State and Nevada, the 4-13 game between Purdue and Vermont. Again, do we have a couple of shots at some upsets here?
Yeah, I definitely think we do in the 5-12 game, and I'm actually predicting it. I think Nevada played really well down the stretch, won their Mountain West tournament that they need to win to get in, and I think have a trio of players: Cameron Oliver, Marcus Marshall.
Did you miss Iowa State just winning the Big 12 tournament? Did you not see that happen?
I saw that happen. I think a lot of time too, these major conference teams, they have to put the effort in to win it. I think Iowa State's gonna be a little flat here. And I like the Wolfpack to win this game.
Wow.
David, do you want to disagree with me of him and tell him that the upset's actually in the Purdue-Vermont game?
Yes. This is one of those to where I think Purdue's going to win, but it's close enough, and you got to pick a couple. And I actually have I have Vermont getting creamed by Iowa State in the round of 32.
Stalika, we've got in Sacramento, Creighton and Rhode Island, Oregon, and Iona. Do you think Oregon can lose now that Chris Boucher is out, either to Iona or in the second round there?
I don't think Oregon is going to have too much trouble getting out of the first two rounds, although there's the intriguing possibility of Dana Altman facing Creighton in round two. I mean, Rhode Island, there is definitely a possibility they can knock off the Blue Jays, but I think Creighton has played much better of late. But they've had their own injury problems that have been well documented, so I think Oregon is fine until they face Louisville in the Sweet 16.
Well, Tytel, you like he just said, we do have the Dana Altman versus Creighton thing, but we do have Chris Boucher out for Oregon. Do you think Oregon can get that far? Do you agree with him?
I think that Creighton will pose a threat, especially because they have a big guy in Patton who does not have Boucher there to block his shots. I'm happy to go on record saying I don't think Arizona would have won the Pac-12 title if Boucher was healthy. I'm certainly happy from a selfish standpoint that he wasn't, although I certainly hope that he gets better. I really thought that Oregon was like a title contender with a healthy Boucher. I really don't think that they can beat the Louisville, Michigan winner or the Louisville, Oklahoma State winner to get to the Elite Eight in the Midwest.
David, let me have you take a look at Indianapolis here. We've got Michigan against Oklahoma State, Louisville against Jacksonville State. I assume you have Louisville winning, but what about that Michigan-Okie State game?
Yeah, I do. Well, I have Louisville winning. I love this game. It's one of the better games, in my opinion, of the round of 64, considering how well those teams have played in the latter part of conference play. Michigan, most especially in the Big Ten tournament, and Oklahoma State. I know they bowed out early the Big 12 tournament, but after starting 0-6, they won 9 of their next 12, I think it was, and in the Big 12. So both of these teams come in, I think, with a lot of momentum and a lot of good wins under their belt, and it should be fun. Now, having said this, whoever does win it, I'm going with Michigan. I just don't see them beating Louisville.
So you're going with Louisville to
Louisville to get to the region.
Okay. Well, Joby, let me start off with you with our next phase here. And do you have a Final Four pick for us and a champion pick?
Sure. It's boring. It's going to be a lot of chalk, but you have I think North Carolina comes out of a region I think that's the weakest region by far. I'd see a lot of 2s and 3s that could upset North Carolina, but not here. Gonzaga, I think, finally makes it. I guess that's the headline. I think they play defense better than they ever have. And Arizona's good, but they're not unstoppable. Gonzaga, I think, finally does it. And Duke is on fire. I don't think they're gassed. I just think they're gelling. Duke and repeat champions are very tough. I think they do take down Villanova in the round of 8. And like I said, if I'm going to say it's relatively chalk, might as well say rock, chalk, Jayhawk for my champion over the Blue Devils. Repeat of 1992, but in reverse.
You've got Kansas knocking off Duke in the finals.
Roy Williams gets his revenge.
Matt, how about you? What do you see for the Final Four and the champion?
Yeah, I've got the defending champions coming out of East Villanova. I think they picked Duke. I am still not as sold on Duke to where if I had a little bit of a stronger 3 seed there, I might even have taken them over Duke. But I think Duke gets there and Nova beats them. In the West, I think Gonzaga actually beats Florida State, who I have knocking off Arizona in the Sweet 16, but I have Gonzaga out of the West. In the Midwest, I do have Louisville actually knocking off Kansas in the Elite Eight. Louisville getting there. And then in the West, or on the East, I have Carolina getting there almost like by default, just because I don't love the 2 or 3s there. And I have them beating Wichita actually in the Elite Eight.
And your champion?
In my champion, I actually have the Gonzaga Bulldogs.
Wow.
That's a fun pick.
Ty, you're shaking your head. Why don't you want to set them straight as to what's going to really happen?
I've tried to set them straight all year, and Gonzaga kept winning and winning and winning, so maybe he knows something I don't. I would caution anyone against going too chalky. I know last year there were a bunch of 1s and 2s with Carolina and Oklahoma and Villanova, but as Syracuse showed, there's always somebody who comes out of the blue. And I don't have a crystal ball either, so I don't know who to predict is going to be that crazy team, but I would be a little nervous about picking only 1s and 2s. That being said, I think that Arizona is going to finally get Sean Miller to his first Final Four. I don't think it's going to be easy. I saw the Zags beat us, but it was without Trier, and he's been better than I thought he was going to be. He's scoring 20-plus a game. He's getting to the hoop. He's making 3s, and with the big guys and everybody else, Zags could even be favored, but I really think Arizona can get there this year. As far as the East, everybody's pushing Duke really hard. I saw Villanova on the road in the second half just step on Georgetown's throat. Granted, who hasn't stepped on Georgetown's throat this year? But I really think that even though Duke has played the best week of their season right now, that you count out the other Wildcats at your peril. So I like Villanova. As far as the South, I want to keep going with Wildcats and pick Kentucky because I really thought that they were going to get it all done this year. UCLA is not going to be scared of them because they've already beaten them, and Carolina is so big. You got to pick some non-1 team, so I don't think it's going to be Carolina, even though they're so great. So I'll go Pac-12 bias and then say UCLA out of the South. And then for the Midwest, I just think Kansas – I know they have the talent to win it all. I don't like all the off-court stuff they've had between arrests and allegations and suspensions. I just think that's karma that comes back to bite you in the butt. And Bill Self is a Hall of Fame coach, but so is Rick Pitino. So I think that I'm going to go because Oregon's hurt, so an easier road. Michigan does seem like a little destiny kind of thing, but I'm going to go Louisville. So Arizona, Villanova, UCLA, Louisville.
And your champion?
Not Arizona because, one, I don't want to jinx them, and two, like, I saw us, like, a couple weeks ago when we were tied with Washington at the half and, like, losing to Washington State in the first half. This is not a I mean, I hope they're a championship team. I'm not buying it. UCLA doesn't have the defense, though. I really think Villanova can repeat. I know it's crazy and they don't have the size. I really think they can repeat, even though it hasn't happened in a decade.
All right, going with the repeat there. Sleeka, how about you?
Well, you don't contest like this without taking a few risks. I mean, I would probably take Villanova, Kansas, Arizona, and UCLA as my final four teams. I don't think there's going to be a repeat for Villanova this year. I think they'll get to the title game, but actually lose to UCLA.
All right. Personally, I am going to go with Duke coming out of the East there over Villanova in the finals. I do agree with for example, what Joby said about Duke there. In terms of the West region, Matt, I am not with you on this Gonzaga pick. In fact, I'm going to go a little bit. I'm going to go down to the 5 seed here in the West. I'm going to take Notre Dame coming out of the West, not only getting back to another Elite Eight, but this time actually getting all the way into the Final Four. Out of the Midwest, I am going to go Rock Chalk. I think they knock off Louisville in that championship game. And out of the South, I'm going to go with UCLA coming out of that South region, knocking off. I don't know that North Carolina's going to get there. I'm actually going to go with Butler to make that regional final, knocking off Carolina, getting knocked off a little bit earlier. Maybe even Carolina getting upset by Seton Hall in the second round. I don't have faith in this.
Whoa!
I would not be shocked to see it. You want to go with a little shock there. I think Carolina may not even make the Sweet 16. I'll go with UCLA. My championship game, I am going to go with the same thing that Joby picked, actually, Kansas over Duke in the finals. But
I do not agree at all on that Butler pick because in some ways that's reminding me of Xavier from last year where they seemed to lose a little bit of steam late in February. I don't think they'll be upset in the first round, but I don't see them getting to the Sweet 16. Either Minnesota or Middle Tennessee is more than capable of taking them out.
Well, David, I want to get your picks, but I think you want to put yours on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this down here.
Yeah, and I don't know if the rest of the panel knows this, but we at Hoops HD were invited to participate in the Las Vegas Bracket Pool Challenge. And Chad wasn't really available to help, so I had the honor of filling out our bracket, and we can win $1 million if this bracket wins. I mean, it's just really exciting here. So I'm going to pull up my bracket onto the screen and just show you what we're entering. Can we see it now?
Yes.
So this is our
Kansas, North Carolina. David, Nebraska didn't make the tournament, you know.
What? Well, they're going. I mean, I still like their chances because I just think the committee did not evaluate them objectively. If you look at the games they won, they were a perfect 11-0, and they beat
you're a
Indiana.
Grinch taking out Northwestern's spot.
You took out Northwestern to put in Nebraska, David. What the hell?
Well, Northwestern's never been before. What makes you think that they should be there now?
No, David, I think we've lost already. Thanks a lot. Let's pull that down. I'll tell you what, though. We do want to take a couple minutes here just at the very end of the show. Actually, let me ask one other question to each of you here. We've never seen a 16 seed beat a 1 seed. I know no one has actually predicted that this year. But let me ask you real quickly. If a 16 did beat a 1 this year, which one do you think is the most vulnerable? Titel?
I don't know that any of the 1 seeds are vulnerable at all, or to be honest, even like top 2 or 3. If I had to pick one, it's not the defending champs, and it's not Roy Williams. I would say Gonzaga only because of the track record, but I really think it's Kansas. I'm telling they have the talent to win it all. There's just so much swirling around them. somebody tried to ask Bill Self about it on the Big 12 call, and he's like, yeah, like we got different athletes in our program talking about different sports and can't talk to the dad of this one and stuff. I'll go Kansas, but there's no way it's going to happen this year.
All right. Does anybody want to make a case for any of the other 16 seeds?
Yeah, I will, and I think
Okay.
there's a reason why. Like, even though I picked Gonzaga as my champion, I'm gonna say
You're picking them to lose in the first round.
no, they're not gonna lose. But if that happens, there's one reason why. Mike Daum, he's an NBA level player on South Dakota State. That say a guy like that maybe goes out for 35. Gonzaga has even an okay night shooting. Maybe that's why. Now, I don't think Daum has enough around him. I think Gonzaga wins that game by 15 or 20. But if you see it, that might be why.
I think you need to evaluate the 16s as much as the ones, because the ones are relatively close.
NC Central.
NC Central shouldn't be a 16. I'm dead serious when I say that. And so if it were to happen, our centenary runner-up would have beaten my Crimson property would have beaten the 1 seed. So there you go.
All right, let's go ahead, and I'm going to pull up the screen share one more time here. There are several other tournaments out there. Just want to take a very quick moment to take a very quick look at them. Starting with the NIT, which has the top 4 teams that missed the field: Syracuse, Illinois State, Iowa, Cal, and Joe, I got to throw this to you. What a matchup for Syracuse in the first round.
I love it. And what just makes me so mad that it's not a coin flip for where the game is.
For those of you that missed it, Jim Boeheim Torrent said that there's no value to playing the ACC tournament in Greensboro, and there they are playing UNC Greensboro.
Yeah, and let me add, and it's funny is because just 2 little components that I actually agree with them a little bit. But yeah, Greensboro was supposed to host a regional, a sub-regional, and it was kind of funny because Wake and Virginia purposely played at UNC Greensboro this year. I guarantee you, with an eye to getting to that region. Then all of a sudden they moved to Greenville. It was too late to schedule Furman. So it's going to be the only value for playing in Greensboro is if there's a regional there that then follows. So you're shooting at the basket. Besides that, Boeheim's right.
One more game of note on this bracket, and I know the story a little bit. Some of you might know it more than I do. Indiana opting not to host an NIT game, so even as the better seed playing at Georgia Tech. I don't want to say what I heard the reason was, but did you hear what the reason was? Because if I'm wrong, I want somebody else to say it because it's pretty crazy.
Well, the official reason was renovations, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, we'll leave it at that then maybe.
I'm assuming someone didn't want to get booed.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I am not imagining that. Yeah, they didn't want Tom Crean to get booed, so they're sending him on the road, thinking that the road fans will be happy to see him.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, they got the ACC Coach of the Year on the other side.
Right.
Let's take a look. There's a couple of tournaments here. Matt, I know this is one of your favorite tournaments, the CBI. Anything worth even watching any of these games?
I mean, I guess Green Bay and Link Donner is always kind of a fun watch, but it's the CBI, and yeah.
Okay. And David, one of our favorite tournaments, the CIT, only takes what we call classic under the radar schools. It won't take a major conference school. They don't actually bracket this though, but you see the first round matchups there on the screen, including 4 classics. Actually Liberty already knocked off Norfolk State tonight. The John McClellan Classic. You got a Hugh Durham Classic tomorrow. The Lou Henson Classic. The Riley Wallace Classic.
The Lou Henson Classic in Indy. What's the connection?
It's Ball State and Fort Wayne.
Oh, well, that okay. Ball State Fort Wayne is actually kind of a fun game. Canisius and Samford, these were 2 teams that I thought, this is going to sound crazy, but I thought were better than their record or played better than their record. They both played well in a lot of games that they didn't win, so interesting that they got matched up. Houston Baptist at Campbell. Houston Baptist, again, having a good year in the Southland, and Campbell having a bad year but a good tournament in the Big South.
Yeah. Well,
and Georgia State going on the road. I would think Georgia State being the strongest team in this field, but they got to go on the road in this one.
Right. Well, there is actually, these are the 3 tournaments that everybody knows about. There is little known yet. There's actually 4 postseason tournaments this year beyond the NCAA tournament. The 4th of which has not yet had its field even revealed, but we are actually going to be revealing it right now, live on tape delay. This is it. It's the AC8 tournament. We started this year at hoopshd.com.
The hell have you done, Chad?
Now, our plan here was, in the spirit of the Vegas 16, we would make our own tournament because anybody can make a postseason tournament now. So we created the AC8.
Chad, let me say real quick
on
that
an aircraft carrier, but we had a little problem. We couldn't get an aircraft carrier. We did get a rowboat, and there's a picture of it right there.
So you're going to play this tournament with this bracket in that league.
Yes.
Chad, I must say that, I mean, in the spirit of the AC8, of the Las Vegas whatever, you're pretty much nailing it.
Now, also, if Gary Parrish came out the other day and said, when you have a conference tournament, you should give the regular season champion a bye to the finals and a 10-0 lead. We didn't want to quite take his idea, so we're giving a team to bye to the finals, and we're going to spot him a 9-0 lead. Not a 10-0 lead. But let's go ahead and reveal, because our number 1 seed here, getting that bye into the finals, is our centenary winner, Alabama A&M. Definitely deserving of that 9-0 lead, if not.
Yes. It'll be
Now,
over by
as far as the rest of the teams, we wanted to create some regions, actually, like the East and the Midwest and the South, but those are boring names for regions. So we came with a little more creative names for our regions as well. So the first of our regions is the Team of the People region. That matches up the original Team of the People, NJIT, from 2 years ago, against this year's Team of the People, New Hampshire. Unfortunately, Grand Canyon did not make it because no Lopes waiver was granted this year.
Not even for our tournament?
Not even for our tournament. We could not get a Lopes waiver. Our second of our regions is my conference screwed me region. These are 2 teams that got screwed over by their conference, quite frankly, this year. First of all, Arkansas Pine Bluff. David, Alcorn State was ineligible for the postseason, yet got to play in the SWAC tournament. Arkansas Pine Bluff, the 9th place finisher of the SWAC, did not get to participate in the conference tournament. That was kind of unfair, wasn't it?
Well, isn't that I screwed my conference region if you're taking Alcorn State?
Well, we're not taking Alcorn State. We're taking Arkansas Pine Bluff. The team that got left out. That was the 9th place finisher that should have been in had Alcorn State not played. The other team thought they were playing in their conference tournament until a week before the conference tournament play. Then suddenly Hawaii is now eligible to play, and UC Santa Barbara has to sit home. I mean, how awful was that for the Gauchos? They get to play in the AC8, though.
It's a strong field. Very worthy of that rowboat that you got there, Chad.
We also have the Battle for Riverside region. This is the newest and greatest rivalry that's about to come into non-conference play in D1, as the UC Riverside is going to be going up against their forthcoming in-city rivals, Cal Baptist. The Lancers getting their first D1 game in the AC8 2 years before they go D1.
Chad, have you reached out to these schools and gotten their itineraries together?
They're seeing right now. This is where they get to find out. They just got to get to that rowboat.
Because Cal Baptist might want to play in the Div 2 tournament since they're one of the favorites.
They can play in both.
Okay.
Last region is we need 2 more teams, so we created it. The first team is we can't have a postseason without this team getting improperly selected for a tournament. So there's Tulsa. Improperly selected for AC8. Their opponent, of course, is Duke.
I'm sure Duke will turn down the NCAAs.
Now, well, they got a better chance of winning this one.
Finally, for those of you that remember, the MEAC used to play a bonus game as part of its conference tournament, a non-bracketed game that was just an extra game in there involving 2 teams that were transitional. Well, we wanted a MEAC bonus game as well. Not involving any MEAC teams. So our MEAC bonus game features one of our favorite non-D1 teams out there, Crowley's Ridge. This is an NCAA team that plays D1 teams once a year. We feature them many times. You can actually, if you want to play on the team, just go to their website and you can sign up, and you can actually start playing as soon as you enroll in the school. And their opponent, of course, last but certainly not least, is Tim Miles.
By himself.
By himself, 5-on-1. A very interesting Yak bonus game. So
Last team in just makes it.
So, David, who do you have winning our AC8 this year?
Tim Miles.
Okay. I guess on that note, let me pull this down. The AC8, we'll get that bracket up on the website too, probably some point. But the teams that were invited are welcome to give us a call to schedule it. There is only a $50,000 entry fee just right
Yes.
to Chad Sherwood. Any final thoughts for our show and for where we've gone so far? Salika, let me start with you.
I think Joby had touched on teams like Virginia and Wake Forest actually going to Greensboro to get a feel for the arena. What do you think we can say about Florida pretty much barnstorming the entire state while the O-Dome was being renovated?
Yeah. Joby, how about you?
Hey, we're looking at this is the day after Christmas, the presents, and you realize some of the presents might not fit exactly right. The clothes might not fit exactly right. Usually there's a lot more complaining. And my biggest complaint about this year's tournament is that there's really a lack of complaining. I mean, there really isn't a lot of outrage, especially on the cut line. I mean, who really wants to say, oh, Jim Boeheim, you got screwed because you didn't leave the state of New York?
Yeah, I think everybody's pretty happy about that, actually.
Yeah. And so I mean, I commend – I guess my complaint is that we don't – if we're complaining about Wisconsin as an 8 as opposed to a 6, then we got much bigger problems.
I'll tell you, Joe, I think you nailed my biggest complaint earlier, NC Central having to play in a play-in game. And if that's my biggest complaint, then you're right. That's a pretty damn good job by the committee. Matt.
It seems like the one issue that a lot of people are complaining about is Wichita's seed. I am real interested to see next year when they're going to do this new metric, it sounds like, the NCAA. How is that going to rectify Wichita's a 10 and even like SMU on the 6 line when they're like, I think, right around 10 in the Ken Pom 2 and they could easily be like a 4. So I want to see how this new metric maybe will help seeding and maybe counterweight a little bit the pure reliance on resume now that I think is important, but I think overly relied upon.
Hey, John T.
2 short ones. If you've never been to a conference tournament, I cannot recommend it enough. I got to go to the Big Ten last weekend. It was fantastic. Obviously, press pass versus spectators, different things, and whether you have a dog in the fight, but couldn't recommend it enough. Number 2, a little news today for you coaching, hiring guys. Tony Benford out at North Texas a couple weeks ago. His replacement today, Grant McCaslin, coming over from Arkansas State. Great young coach. He was an assistant for 5 years at Baylor. He won a D2 title a decade ago, and I just think it's a great hire. If he can recruit Texas, which there's a lot of talent in Texas, there's a lot of tournament teams from Texas, I think it's a good hire by North Texas.
I concur.
David, before I go to you, Salika, you had one final comment you want to make?
Yep, I just realized this while we were going through the brackets. There is actually one under-the-radar conference that has over 50% of its participants in the postseason, and that would be the WAC. We have New Mexico State into the NCAA tournament. We have Bakersfield in the NIT, and there are actually 2 teams that are in the CBI. That's a UMKC and Utah Valley, so congratulations to the old school WAC.
Oh, 50% of the WAC, yeah. David.
Well, whereas John Teitel says that if you've never had the chance to go to a conference tournament, he can't recommend it enough. I've also been fully credentialed at a few conference tournaments, and I've had very different experiences at different tournaments. But I wasn't at the Big Ten. I won't say where I was at. But my final thought is when I feel this way literally every year, and I strongly feel this way again. I get that the committee seeds off paper, and that in and of itself maybe isn't unfair. I think it's a little unfair that some good teams don't get the chances to play in the games the committee values. And when I look at the 12 line, and even part of the 13 line, and even some teams that weren't taken, most notably Monmouth, who I knew, and I look at teams that are inside the bubble but on the bottom half of the bracket, so we're talking 9, 10, and 11 seeds. I think these teams are better. I think Wilmington's better than any of those teams. I think Middle Tennessee certainly is, and I think some of the teams that, like Monmouth, could beat 9, 10, and 11 seed teams in this tournament. if they got them on a neutral floor. And I guess the overall thought is, first of all, it's kind of rubs me the wrong way that Middle Tennessee and Wilmington would not have even been selected. But the second part of that is it fair to a 5 seed and possibly a 4 seed in the round of 32 that they're having to play someone that's arguably harder to beat than what the 6, 7, and 8 seeds are having to play?
Well, and that maybe leads into, they always talk about these 5-12 seeds upsets always happening. Well, maybe the reason they're happening is because we are seeding these teams at 12s when they should really be 9s and 10s and 11s. And maybe, as Matt mentioned about metrics, it's time to reevaluate these metrics and find a better way to determine them and determine some of these seedings, because I think you're right. I think it is unfair that a team like Middle Tennessee can have an amazing season, and had they fallen to Marshall, they'd be in the NIT.
Right.
But I guess on that note, then, on behalf of David Griggs and Matt Sikowski to the sides of me, John Titell, John Slika, and Joby Fortson down below, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be back again. I think we'll be back in next week with a Sweet 16 preview and go from there. But thanks for joining us, and have a great night, everyone.